I had nowhere to go and my sister bailed on me. After sacrificing my youth for her, I'm now ending that chapter of my life. If ever, I'm only opening my door at the tiniest of cracks for her. From a young age, my sister has had only one person to rely on, and that person was me. We come from a broken family with one parent who was only around until I was 5 and the other who was stuck in a cycle of addiction. Because of our situation, I grew up very quickly and shielded her as much as I could. She was obviously aware of what was going on, but she was never in the crosshairs. I started by stealing from our mother to make sure we had food and our bills were paid. I got a part-time job at 13 because we couldn't rely on her. When I graduated, I immediately got 2 jobs, and we moved out. I had to push my sister through high school on top of going from month to month trying to get as much money together to pay for our bills. At 19, she finally graduated after being held back a year. She changed her tune, started working as well, and had her own place when she was 21. I finally got a shot to do something for myself and got a degree. As a result, I got a much better job, but unfortunately, that was right before the pandemic hit, so I pretty much went from being hired to being fired as a new hire. Now, the reason I am saying all that is not to pat myself on the back, but to stress why my reaction is the way it is. I was out of work, on the brink of losing my apartment, and only had one person who I expected I could turn to, my sister. She was recently married and lived with her husband, so I asked if I could stay a few weeks at most or a few months until I got a new job. It was a no. I was taken aback, but a no is a no. A week or 2 later, I was kicked out of my apartment. I asked again, and it was still a no. At this point, I was homeless, and the only reason I didn't end up sleeping on the damn street was because I crashed with a few friends until I got a temporary job. I rented a room with a bunch of roommates for a while, eventually got a job in my field again, and am now doing fine. That said, I have not spoken to my sister since. She has called, messaged, banged on my door, sent crying voice messages, apologized dozens of times, tried to explain herself, tried going to my job, tried going to friends, etc. I haven't said a word to her, and it's been over a year now. She recently had a child, and she is still desperately trying to reach out. She claims her husband refused to let me stay. He even reached out several times to beg me to reach out, but to me, the one time I needed her, she basically told me to F myself. I feel like it was the last push I needed to just end that chapter of my life. I feel bad, but just not bad enough, I guess. Even my friends and my girlfriend are on my case that I should forgive her and that they understood it at first, but now they think I'm being a jerk. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Update 1. So I had a huge amount of people inquiring as to what ended up happening and asking me to make an update should anything happen. And while I wasn't sure if I would or even should, I eventually decided to just go ahead and do it. Let me start by apologizing to the people who commented on my post. I made my post, and it didn't seem to gain much traction at all, so I more or less stopped looking at it for about a day, I think, only to figure out the next day that I had gotten a lot of comments. Unfortunately, when I decided to reply to a lot of the comments I had been reading, I realized that this subreddit locks the comments after a certain number of comments have been made or karma has been reached. I am afraid I was not aware of this admittedly very odd rule, so that's on me. I did end up reading most comments, and I would like to thank everyone for offering advice or just saying something supportive. Here's what I would like to clarify. The first few no's were without reasonable explanation. I was not aware of her given reason, that her husband was not okay with it, until later. She did not know she was pregnant when she declined, and most of it happened before she would have even been pregnant in the first place. I mean, most of this took place over a year ago. I am not an anti-vaxxer, dirty, or something. There were quite a few comments that theorized this would be the case for her refusal. I got my 2 vaccination shots the moment I could. Well, while my personal hygiene is not exactly anyone's business, I shower once a day, and my apartment is spotless. A lot of advice and comments seem to be from the perspective of functional families with a functional family structure, and that is not the case here. The primary reason I am so gutted about this entire situation is exactly that. This isn't a case of, well, I don't want my cousin to stay in my house. He can stay somewhere else. This is a case of me having sacrificed my entire youth and a significant portion of my early adult life for someone that I played no part in creating or have any parental responsibility for. The first and only time I ever asked her to do something for me as the only person I could reasonably fall back on, and her not doing that, that's more than a familial spat, that is a straight up betrayal. I decided to follow some advice given by several people. I told my girlfriend and the friends who involved themselves or were involved by my sister to back off or to lose my number. They do not understand my perspective, and they likely never will. One friend kept pestering me about it, and I ended up dropping him as a friend, but my girlfriend was apologetic, and most friends were either apologetic or said they'd drop it. I ended up writing a long email to my sister, and while I will not copy and paste the entire thing here as it contains a lot of personal information and far more horrible stuff that I am unsure will even be allowed on a sub like this, it more or less boiled down to me explaining to her how her refusal to take me in for what ended up being a few weeks made me feel. And I detailed a long list of things I had done to take care of her. I ended up finishing my email, telling her that even if I take her version of the story as truth and her husband is the cause of my not being allowed to stay, it is entirely irrelevant to me because that just means she didn't fight for me at all. I also informed her that I have no interest in meeting her child at this moment and I have no interest in reconnecting with her, and if that changes in the future, I will be the one to contact her. I told her to let this be a lesson for her, as it has been a painful lesson for me. I have decided to move on and keep the door on the tiniest of cracks. She has responded numerous times to my email, but I have not responded since.